Mr. Narayanan, I think, Tamil Nadu is such a fragmented political landscape. There are so many parties. People from who are not from the south will say, there are so many abbreviations here. But another thing that is unknown, perhaps, or less known about Tamil Nadu politics is that it is also very deeply embedded in caste politics. As much as we'd like to say development and jobs and issues, there is also an important caste factor that is played, an issue which everybody knows. Uttar Pradesh politics is so wedded in caste, but when it comes to Tamil Nadu, at least the people outside Tamil Nadu are not really aware of the realities and how pressing this is.
Well, the point is that Tamil Nadu is not an also party in the caste system. It is the leading party. Please remember, this is where the Justice Party was born, which gave rise to the Dravida Karagam, which in turn became Dravida Munnetra Karagam as an offshoot, and then the AIADMK with all its factions and the PMK. So Tamil Nadu is the fountainhead of what you could call modern caste politics, alongside Karnataka perhaps, because Devaraja's ushered in his own reservation politics there. So that is the point we want to remember. In fact, Tamil Nadu has reached an advanced state of caste politics in which, you have even the so-called Dalit parties or caste classified as Dalits, like the Devendra Kulatar, now want to be reclassified as OBCs. In fact, I keep joking that in Tamil Nadu, when you want a job, you declare yourself to be one caste. And when you want to get married, you declare yourself to be another caste, because everybody wants upward social mobility as well as upward economic mobility. This is the paradox of the Indian system. But all that social things apart, the fact is that politically it means that there is a fragmented polity in which various kinds of parties have come in. The interesting part is that we now have Kamal Hassan alongside BJP, who seem to be ushering in an attempted transcendence from caste politics from completely different ends. BJP based on a Hindutva plank of Hindu unity, and Kamala Hassan from a very modern point of view of looking beyond caste dynamics into an urbanized polity. So in a larger context, Tamil Nadu is very interesting. But it's also true that we do not know from this election how much of the votes would be as fragmented as the parties seem to be there, because opinion polls seem to suggest that DMK has a very clear upper hand, which basically means that it is fighting on a winning track because there is 10 years of incumbency of AIADMK, which all tilts the thing in favor against ADMK, which is already fragmented by the death of Jayalalitha and the birth of AMMK. So you have an alphabet soup of parties out there, from extreme Tamil sentiments like the Nam Tamil Party that it represents, and from modern governance based on centrist philosophy that Kamal Hassan, who takes Abdul Kalam, the former president, as an icon of a development-oriented politics. So we have a very interesting situation resembling something like the fall of the Roman Empire from history, or from after the decline of Aurangzeb and Mughals in the British system, where there is a huge power vacuum, and the vacuum is being sought to be filled by all sorts of people with nobody really clear on what is going on in the people's mind. If the campaigns are any indication, because the campaigns are this time hotter than ever before. The only such a hot, evenly poised campaign I've seen was in 1991, when you had the Mandal and the Mandir and the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi playing out in the nation in such a way that you didn't know what was going on.
Well, that is...
We have a similar...
That is true, Mr. Narayanan. It's an election like never before that Tamil Nadu has actually seen, and we'll discuss that in just a bit. But you were referring to Kamal Hassan. In fact, earlier this morning, he had also gone and cast his vote bright and early, like a number of other leaders. T.S. Sudhir, this Kamal Hassan factor, is it going to be all hype? Because his party didn't do as well in the Lok Sabha elections as perhaps he would have thought. In this time, this election, he himself has taken the electoral plunge. Is there a question more of hype and popularity that might not necessarily translate into votes?
Well, Aarti, that would obviously come when a popular actor is entering the electoral fray. And in fact, most people expected that there would be some kind of a jugalbandi between Rajnikant and Kamal Hassan. That was not to be, with Rajnikant perhaps rightly so, deciding to stay out of the electoral and the political fray. But speaking about Kamal Haasan in particular, no one really expected him to sweep the elections in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections. I think they were looking at specific pockets, specific urban pockets, and they did reasonably well in select constituencies in both Chennai and Coimbatore. And that's the reason why Kamal Haasan decided to go to Coimbatore South to take on a strong candidate of the AIDMK BJP combined, Vanati Srinivasan, in Coimbatore South, because that's the one constituency where the Lok Sabha candidate of the MNM had done well in that particular pocket in 2019. So they are looking specifically at the urban pockets. Also, Kamal Haasan as an actor had much more of an appeal amidst the more intellectual crowd, the multiplex crowd in the urban centers of Tamil Nadu than the rural part of Tamil Nadu. So he is really trying to cash in on that. And I don't think Kamal Haasan is really looking only at the 2021 election. If he's really going to be a long-term player in the politics of Tamil Nadu, he should be and he will be looking more at 2026 in order to see whether he can emerge as a rival, as a competition to the two Dravidian parties in the next 5 years or so. And that will really be his mission if he manages to hold on to his vote bank in the urban centers, especially in cities like Chennai, Coimbatore, Madurai, etc., Tuticorin, and later on tries to build up on that. Many would feel that perhaps this was not the right strategy, that he should have tied up taking some seats from the DMK Congress alliance because he has been a great long-time admirer of Kalaignar Karunanidhi. So he should have tied up with that, because at least that would have promised him some kind of a presence in the next Tamil Nadu assembly. Now what the risk he faces is, if he does not manage to win seats or many seats in this particular Tamil Nadu election, whether he will be able to sustain himself and his MNM over the next 5 years. That's going to be the big challenge. Or will he go the way of, say, Pawan Kalyan in neighboring Andhra Pradesh, where the Janasena managed to win only one seat and Pawan Kalyan himself lost both the seats he contested from. That's going to be the big challenge as far as Kamal Haasan is concerned. He needs to win both Coimbatore South and also some more seats in the rest of Tamil Nadu in order to be there as a presence in the next Tamil Nadu Assembly.
Mr. Narayanan, I know you want to come in, but just very quickly, we need to take a detour to Assam. But before that, for all our viewers, the visuals on your screen that you're seeing right now are of Stalin and his family at Karunanidhi's memorial. Quick reminder once again, Udayinidhi Stalin is still not wearing his mask, but paying tribute to, the DMK's founder, Supremo, the tallest leader, well, not the DMK's founder, but certainly the tallest leader in recent times, Mr. Karunanidhi. This is the first election, of course, state election in the absence of both Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha, and it's something that will weigh on both parties, both of them looking forward to take the legacy of Jayalalitha and Karunanidhi. We're going to discuss Tamil Nadu some more in just a bit, but quick detour to Assam, as I was saying, where my colleague Mohammad Wajiullah is waiting by in Kokrajhar. Waji, good morning to you. Kokrajhar is a very sensitive area. It has seen violence in the past, and this election hopefully is going to be very different over there. At least, we're not expecting any untoward incident, but give us a sense of what the issues are on ground.
Well, I am in one of the most remotest village of East Kokrajhar, where they're celebrating the Festival of Democracy, and I've been taking rounds of these areas, and people have turned out in large numbers here. That is one thing very important to say, because it is believed that people don't turn up earlier in these parts, but they have turned up in large numbers, and you can see the crowd is swelling by the minute. But now if we talk about this third phase of election, we've seen a lot happening since the second phase and the third phase. We've seen repolling happening in one of the places. We've seen how the Dadi Topi jibe by Badruddin Ajmal's son, spiral bounding with the Prime Minister also contributing to it. With all these factors playing into account, this particular region where I am right now is the BTR region, where the BJP is fighting 4 seats along with the UPPL, and the Congress is fighting with its alliance partner BPF. Now, this particular area is a stronghold of the Congress because especially the entire third phase because the lower Assam is a mix of both the Bodo tribes and the Muslim region, and the Congress has both the BPF, the larger which gets the larger chunk of the vote, and the AIUDF to woo the Muslims. While on the other hand, the BJP has placed UPPL, which will be the major vote cutter for all these parties. But will it turn into a victory? Something that only the counting will tell us. But there are a lot of issues that the people over here are facing, and they will let me try to see if I can speak. Sir, आप लोग बात करेंगे. Basically, मेरे को आपसे ये पूछना है कि आप लोग जो बटन दबाने जाएंगे, दबाने से पहले क्या सोचेंगे आप लोग, आपके लिए इश्यूज क्या रहेंगे, और तब आप बटन दबाएंगे. आप बात करेंगे. Well, people are quite shy over here. They're not ready to speak on camera. But when I spoke to a few of them, a lot of these people said that they don't have development. The schools that you have here are old schools. So one is development. They're looking for some preferences for their community. Also, the flood issue is one of them. And also, the CA and NRC is one of the biggest issues that the people of Assam are facing. They're quiet about it because of the entire COVID region, but that is one of the major chunk of issues that the people of Assam feel that will come into play when they go cast their vote.
Vaji, full marks to you,
distribution.
though you did try to get them to speak, very silent voters, but of course the voters, Vinay, they know what they want, even though they don't want to say it on camera.
Yeah, no, that part of Assam is usually shy. It's not just the language handicap, it's also shy. You know, it's not an area where people are very open, especially with media. And remember, Vaji is not from that state. So they are not very comfortable with reporters who come from outside the state. I mean, if you'll see local channels, possibly they'll open up a little bit more. But with national channels who are not familiar with the same language, they don't open up. That's pretty much what we've seen in Assam.
When I spotlight back on Tamil Nadu, today's Tamil Nadu's, I think, day in the sun after. And when I say day in the sun, no pun intended at all. That was, I mean, though I'm sure the DMK would like it to be that in more ways than one. But in the run-up to these elections, and we obviously have seen the Sasikala drama, which we'll talk about, but we've also seen this raid, Raj, I beg your pardon, where we've seen, and this isn't, of course, exclusive to Tamil Nadu. When Maharashtra went to polls, we've seen it. It's not just happened in the NDA government, in the UPA government. This has almost become a mainstay, you know, central agencies suddenly jumping in on the eve of polls.
That's right, but that's the BJP's template. BJP has a very well-defined template, and they have attempted using it in most states. In fact, in this particular case, in the case of Tamil Nadu, for instance, they've used a template not just with raids using central agencies, but also playing the cards they played in other states. I mean, even politically, for instance, in Bihar, successfully, and in Maharashtra, not so successfully, they have attempted riding piggyback on a local party, and then weakening that party, and then trying to gain ascendancy in that state. I mean, they've done that successfully with Nitish Kumar, who's now a much diminished leader. They tried doing it with Shiv Sena. Obviously, they haven't been able to manage it fully. And they kind of attempted to do that even with the IDMK, and has not managed in the way that they wanted to. Now, the same template also includes the issues like Hindutva, issues like religion, issues like majoritarianism, issues of, you know, the usual template that they always go with. Unfortunately, in the last few years, you're now noticing a template of central agencies being badly misused. I mean, they attempted doing it with Sharad Pawar in Maharashtra. It badly boomeranged, because Sharad Pawar is a smart cookie. He just turned the tables and said, very good, I'm coming, and I'm coming with 20,000 people. Never have we heard of that case ever since then, right? They've tried doing that in Bengal as well, and now they're doing the same thing in Tamil Nadu. Now, I don't know whether this template works everywhere. I mean, that's the lesson I hope the BJP is learning as well, because it is so brazen.
Correct.
And it is so open and transparent that some people are not that stupid either.
Yeah, it's hardly subtle at all. Mr. Narayanan, you know, when I was talking about this template that the BJP follows, I mean, besides using agencies, there's also religion, there is, you know, there is also a certain nationalism template. Now, these issues, at least in Tamil Nadu, won't have as much traction as perhaps they'd have in some other states.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to remember two things. One is that, as Vinay put it very well, let me add a bit. BJP is not a big fan of the institutional model of governance. They prefer the personality and the centralized model of governance, which is why during 2019, I said that the parliamentary elections have been presidentialized. So all this use of enforcement directorate and CBI follows logically from the presidentialization mindset, which believes in majority as authority and authority as all-encompassing instead of the checks and balances system, which is what the British parliamentary governance all about. But these abstractions apart, the fact is that if you looked at the social dynamics of politics, which is actually a subject that fascinates me, because politics is only a symptom of society. And if you look at it, Tamil Nadu literacy is gone. If you look at the data, like the engineering colleges boom for 30 years now, if you look at the IT boom, if you look at the fact that there has been emotional empowerment of the masses through the Dravida ideology, you will find that there's a huge amount of discounting going on, in which case BJP's usual template is not likely to succeed. If anything, the DMK has been, like Sharad Pawar, who Vinay Tiwari quoted, has been not only taking it on his chin, has been actually converting that into a strategy. In fact, last week there was a Twitter trend saying, Mr. Modi, please come and campaign in my constituency because I want the DMK to win. This was from DMK's candidate. So they kind of laugh it off or turn it into an opportunity. And it looks like it is working either because of anti-incumbency factors or because of the factors that I mentioned, from empowerment, education, literacy, and a bit of a higher degree of awareness. Please understand that non-Hindi states have a higher propensity to understand institutional governance, because institutions like governor's office, invocation of Article 356 have been par for the course of what used to be earlier called the non-Congress states, and now which can now be called the non-BJP states.
Yes.
So BJP is trying to do what the Congress did in the 60s and 70s. Actually, it's as simple as that.
I mean, it is a different ballgame for the BJP completely. T.S. Sudhir, you know, I think realistically, obviously, the BJP, or in fact, even there is no real scope or space for a national political party, I think, to be in power on their own or be the major party in Tamil Nadu. I think the political landscape from the Congress being in complete charge now has changed completely in Tamil Nadu. But nevertheless, even the BJP's chances is considered to be more the silent player that's pulling the strings, be it when it comes to the AIDMK or even be it when it comes to somebody like a Rajnikant, who was thought to be the B team of the BJP?
Well, Tamil Nadu is a unique state, Aarti, because here is one state where the national parties have not been in power for the last 50 odd years. The two Dravidian parties are the ones which have kind of alternated power between themselves since the late 60s. So in that sense, it's very significant. Now, there is a school of thought that believes that the Dravidian ideology has dominated Tamil Nadu for the last 5 decades or so, and perhaps now it's a time, with the absence of stalwarts like MGR, Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha, that perhaps now is the time to press the reset button, and that's precisely what the BJP at least is trying to do. If you speak to people on the ground in Chennai, in most parts of Tamil Nadu, they would agree that the AIDMK over the past 4 years after the demise of Jayalalitha has almost become like an outpost of the BJP in Tamil Nadu. Of course, the AIDMK says that they are in kind of an arrangement with the BJP in the sense that the corporation actually benefits the state of Tamil Nadu, especially in administrative affairs. But the fact remains that, and that has been the campaign issue, campaign line of the DMK also, that it is the BJP is anti-Tamil, it is more of a Hindi party, and therefore it's trying to dominate Tamil Nadu by dominating the ruling party in Tamil Nadu, and that is what they're seeking a vote against in this particular election in Tamil Nadu. Now, what could happen possibly in the future, we do not know, but I believe that the BJP has played its cards pretty smartly. Irrespective of which way the election results in 2021 go, I think the BJP will try to strengthen itself. If the AIDMK does not do very well, as some of the opinion polls seem to suggest, the BJP will move in for the kill. It will try to kind of ensure that its domination over the AIDMK is even more strong if it's not in a position to reassert itself. So expect a lot of flux after the election results in the month of May.
In fact, that's exactly what I wanted to go around the table to all of you and ask you. T.S. Sudhir, you of course referred to it. There could be flux. If the AIDMK doesn't do well, the BJP could go in for a kill. There's another person who either perhaps will be a tool for that or an independent entity in that, and that is Sasikala. I don't think any discussion on a political landscape in Tamil Nadu can be complete without discussing the Sasikala factor. Vinay, let's start with you. Everybody thought it's going, Sasikala is going to come take over the party. She's now playing for time, isn't she? I don't think anybody really believes that this is her final walk into the sunset.
No, absolutely not. I mean, nobody believes that. I mean, absolutely no question about that. And also, look, I mean, look, both Madhavan and Sudhir understand the state much better than I do. But from a distance, I can see that her strategy of actually now publicly pretending to have a one-arm distance is a very smart one, because she pretty much probably has a sense already that the DMK just enjoy an edge. And when you lose an election, your ability to actually move in for a hostile takeover is much easier.
Yes.
It's much like the corporate world, right? If a company is weak, you can effect a hostile takeover easier. And possibly that's what she's aiming for. And obviously the BJP is fishing in troubled waters. I mean, they're not just fishing, they have a trawler ship with a large net there, ready to catch whatever they can. And in that sense, I agree with Sudhir. I think they're playing it smartly because they know that there are troubled waters, and they've seen, they attempted, the first strategy was obviously to prop up Rajinikanth. That didn't work. His will I, won't I went on for too long, and I think that just gotten over. Now, this for them is the next best strategy possible. There's no question about that.
Mr. Narayanan, do you agree that that's, don't write out Sasikala just yet? Of course, it's just going to be a matter of time before she jumps back into the fray.
I have a lot to say on that subject, Aarti, because it's a fascinating study of Tamil Nadu, because Hinduism never went away from Tamil Nadu. It has a history of Shaivism. And it's important to remember that O. Pannirselvam and Sasikala both belong to the Tevar community, which are technically Kshatriyas according to Hindu hierarchy. Although they are classified as OBC under Tamil Nadu's very liberal backwardness rules, they are Tevars, and they have been custodians of village temples in the past. They've been religiously devout, and although the influence of Pasumpan Muthurammaliga Tevar and his association with Netaji Subhash Bose made them tilt somewhat left in the past, or looked like left. The fact is that they are a very conservative community which formed the backbone of the ADMK now, and even under Jayalalitha earlier, and Jayalalitha was also a very devout Hindu. So Hindutva, as in Hinduism, never went away from Tamil Nadu in spite of the Dravida ideology and the kind of atheism that Periyar EVR preached. So BJP is simply logically tying up with this on the one hand and hoping that it will dominate what is a relationship in which it is now a very reluctant second fiddle partner. But Dravida ideology, modernity are complex forces, because rationalism is also a part of the Tamil tradition alongside, just like the Hindu tradition, which Hindutvavadis try to overlook. Rationalism and deep thinking and social change are a part of the Hindu template. And I don't think the Savarkarians have any copyright or ownership over this. So there are plenty of nuances playing out. And this is the opportunity for me to counter what Sudhir said earlier about Kamala Hassan. He may not win seats, but he is like in a position potentially like what the Bahujan Samaj Party and the BJP itself were in 1984. So if they don't win seats and if they win votes, and they know how to use that in a parliamentary system to build coalitions or a forward-looking strategy, I see them as having a better future than a simple seat logic might suggest right now. So therefore, it's an open game in terms of ideology. And Tamilians are very good speakers and a very argumentative community, to borrow a memorable phrase from Professor Amartya Sen. So they are part of argumentative Indians from the front end. And what this means is that the political game is wide open in Tamil Nadu, but there is a room for conservative Hindu politics. And please remember, Sasikala was busy attending temple ceremonies last week or 10 days ago.
Well,
so she wants to convey that image.
Mr.
So
Narayanan, I have Vinay raising his hand very patiently here.
I had a question for Madhavan,
Okay,
actually.
please,
I had a question. I didn't have a comment. My question was specifically this, that in Tamil Nadu, do you sense that they distinguish between Hindu and Hindi? Because for the BJP, a lot of times both are the same. In fact, if you see in the parliament, for instance, the BJP MPs always respond in Hindi to a comment being made by any MP from Tamil Nadu.
I am glad you asked that question, Vinay Tiwari. I mean, I have a lot to say. If you see Kamala Hassan's science fiction theme, but very traditional movie called Dasavataram, he begins by pointing out to the 1,000 years ago in Tamil Nadu, where the Shaivites and Vaishnavites were fighting like they were, Hindus and Muslims of those times. So Tamil Nadu has a very fractured Hindu culture in which Tamil and Shaivism have played a major role. And therefore, they are very separately conscious of the Tamil identity as well as the Shaivite identity. And the Shaivite identity, although in the short run might be friendly to Hindutva, has its own dynamic. So it's a complex equation. And all I can tell you is that the Tamil identity is not going away anywhere. There is a completely separate narrative. That is why you see Velupillai Prabhakaran being used as an icon in the current Tamil Nadu elections by two significant parties. I think one was Nam Tamilar, there were other parties. So Prabhakaran remains a Tamil idol. And but Prabhakaran was also a Hindu. So just as we have Muslim countries which have need not be simply Pakistan. You know, Muslim countries fight with each other. Tamil countries may have differences with each other, but there is a pan-Tamil sentiment as well, which very clearly stands up against Hindi and what you could call Aryan domination. Therefore, Hindutva was never a simplistic ideology, which is why Congress actually was considered to be a Hindu party during independence, if you listen to historians like Stanley Walpert. So it's a fascinating puzzle in which simplistic narratives won't work, and certainly not in Tamil Nadu.
It's a fascinating narrative, and Vinay is very fascinated. He's listening very intently. I don't think he paid that much attention in school either, but he is very he's very intently listening to that. T.S. Sudhir, we're running out of time. I'm going to give you the final word on this, very interesting social, political, complex dynamics that we're seeing in Tamil Nadu.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, as Madhav Narayanan very rightly put it, it's not simple at all. It's an extremely complex and complicated kind of a caste, religion dynamic that plays out in Tamil Nadu, and also not to forget the language element. Just a quick point again to what Madhavan spoke about Kamal Haasan. I do believe that Kamal Haasan takes away most of the votes which are not in favor of DMK and not definitely in favor of AIDMK. And that's what his constituency is. The challenge for Kamal Haasan, both 2021 as well as going forward, would be to enlarge that base. People who feel that there needs to be a change as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, that we have given these two Dravidian parties lots of chances to come to power, and now is the time to look for change. And how he kind of builds up on the base that he started with in 2019, now in 2021, that will really determine what his political future is going to be in Tamil Nadu.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for that. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation on the politics, the sociology of Tamil Nadu. I appreciate you taking out time and speaking to us on Polling Day Live. We're going to slip into a short break, but stay tuned. There's plenty on the other side.